This video is about the very basics of supply and demand in competitive markets. The demand curve is a graphical representation of how much consumers value a product or service, and therefore shows how many people would be willing to purchase that product or service at any given price. When drawing any curve, you must always label your axes appropriately. In the case of a demand curve, the labels are price and quantity. Although it is called the demand curve, we usually draw it as a straight line, but if you were to collect data, you would discover that the line does curve, hence the name. So if good X was being sold at price P1, then Q1 people would buy it. However, if the price was raised to P2, then the number of goods sold would reduce to Q2. The supply curve is a graphical representation of how willing suppliers are to sell their products or service at any given price. The axes are the same as the demand curve, and the supply curve is also usually drawn as a straight line, despite actually being curved. The main differences between the supply and demand curves are that they slope in opposite directions. This is because most suppliers want to sell at a high price, but very few consumers would be willing to buy at that price. So at price P1, suppliers are only willing to supply Q1 goods. But if the price was raised to P2, then suppliers would be willing to supply Q2 goods. Now I'll talk about how the price mechanism works. But first notice that I have labelled which curve is which on the diagram. This may seem arbitrary, but you can lose marks in the exam if you draw a diagram without correct labels. This diagram is a typical market diagram and shows what happens in the market for a good or service when a certain price is charged. For example, if price P1 is charged, then there is a problem. Only Q1 consumers are willing to purchase the good at this price, but suppliers are producing Q2 goods, so there is an excess supply. This means that the market has lots of stock left that they can't sell, so they reduce their price to sell the excess stock. But if they reduce their price too much, for example to P2, then there is another problem. The suppliers are only willing to supply Q3 goods, but the consumers are willing to buy Q4 goods. This is called excess demand. This means that many consumers are missing out on the good because there aren't enough being supplied to meet the demand. So the suppliers need to raise their price to reduce the amount of demand. This process continues until the supply is equal to the demand. This is the equilibrium price and output, PE and QE. This is what the price mechanism does. It helps the market reach an equilibrium. But the circumstances in the market can change. Right now, the market is in equilibrium at price P1 and output Q1, but then the market changes, and the level of demand for a product has gone from D1 to D2. But at the current price the market is operating at, the demand is now Q2, so there is an excess. Therefore, the price mechanism will force the price into a new equilibrium. At price P2 and outputs Q3. But what could cause this shift in demand? Please note that a rightward shift is an increase in demand and a leftward shift is a decrease in demand. If there is a general increase in consumers' incomes, then the demand will increase, but only for normal goods. These are goods that people will buy more of if they have a larger disposable income, such as music or eating at restaurants. The opposite of normal goods are inferior goods. The demand for these goods decreases as income increases. Examples include public transport and fast food. If the price of a complementary good falls, then the demand for this good will increase. For example, if the price of hot dogs fell, then people would buy more hot dog buns to eat with their hot dogs. A substitute good is the opposite of a complementary good. For example, if the price of Coca-Cola fell, then the demand for Pepsi would fall. A successful advertising campaign can also increase demand, as more consumers are aware of the existence of the product, and it may be in the forefront of the consumers' minds. A change in supply can also have an effect on the market. Again, the market is currently in equilibrium at price P1 and Q1, but then supply shifts. Just like demand, a shift to the right is an increase in supply, and a shift to the left is a decrease. So at the current price, suppliers are willing to supply at Q2. So there is an excess demand, and the price mechanism reduces the price to P2, and there is a new equilibrium. A shift in supply can be caused by the following. If the firms in the market can reduce their production costs, then they are more willing to supply their good at a lower price because it costs them less to produce. If the government imposed more taxes on the firms in the market, then their overall costs would have gone up, so they are less willing to supply at a lower price. A good has composite demand when it has several uses that are all in demand. A simple example of a good with composite demand is water, as you would demand the good more if you have more uses for it, as you wouldn't drink the water that you used for washing. A good has derived demand if it is being demanded because of the demand for another good. For example, if the demand for cake increased, then the suppliers of cake would demand more cake ingredients to produce the cake. Goods are in joint supply if when the supply of one good changes, the supply of the other good automatically changes as a result. For example, increasing the supply of chicken meat will increase the supply of eggs, as more chickens will have to be bred in order to meet the demand for the meat. Here is an example where increasing the supply of one good reduces the supply of the other. If the supply of clothes is increasing, then the supply of fishing nets may fall, as the limited availability of cotton means that if more is being used for clothes, less can be used for fishing nets. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful, but if it was confusing or incorrect, please let me know in the comments. If you have any inquiries, send us a message on our channel, AtticAcademy, or send us an email at AtticAcademy@gmail.com. If you need help with another subject or topic, please submit your request on the Respond and Vote module at the bottom of our channel page.